Good afternoon, everyone. My name is State Representative Michael Quinn. I'm a member of the Meriden Hall of Fame Association Board of Directors, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies this afternoon for the 46th Annual Meriden Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony. Before we begin, I'm going to call on Deacon George Frederick from Our Lady Queen of Angels Parish in Meriden for our invocation.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be here today to remember and honor Herbert, Lucille, Mollie, Walter, Robert, and Christopher as they are inducted into the Meriden Hall of Fame. All generously gave of their time and talents to the city of Meriden and made it a better place to live. We thank you, gracious God, for the lives they lived and for the legacy they left to the people of Meriden. May their lives and their outstanding accomplishments be a shining example not only for all of us here today, but for future generations, especially for the young people of Meriden, that they will strive to be like them and follow the example they set of giving back to this city. We thank their family members and friends who are here today, and we ask you to bless them, that they will continue to carry on the memory of their beloved honoree, so that the good that they have done may never be forgotten, but always remembered and imitated. Almighty God and Father, be with us this day and every day, and guide us in all things. We give you glory and praise as we pray in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Deacon. And with greetings from the city of Meriden, the Honorable Michael Cardona, our Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. On behalf of the mayor, who extends his regrets as he could not be here today due to an out-of-state family obligation, and as well as the city council, I'd like to welcome you all here today. I'd like to thank the Meriden Hall of Fame committee and volunteers for putting this event together. I also want to acknowledge and congratulate the inductees and their families, especially those who are being honored posthumously. I had the honor of serving with one of today's inductees, Mr. Walter Shamock. He was always forthcoming and clear where he stood on the issues. He dedicated so much of his time to the service of Meriden. And from what I have learned about all of today's inductees, this is a common thread no matter the category. Be it sports, business, government, philanthropy, all played an important role in serving the community they loved. Today, we remember their contributions and carry on their legacy by working together to build a better Meriden for future generations. Thank you.
And before we move on to our 2022 inductees, I'd like to take this opportunity to honor our past inductees. I believe we have 3 in the room. If I've missed anyone, wave your hands, scream, do something. But in attendance today are Joan Edgerly, Irene Massey, and Chief Robert Kaczynski. If all 3 of you could stand and be recognized. All 3 have left their mark on the city in the most positive way, and I know that all 6 of our inductees today have left their mark on the city in the most positive way. Our first inductee in the category of Business and Commerce is Herbert Barker, and here to present on behalf of Herbert Barker is Attorney Dennis Senaviva.
Thank you, Mike. What an attractive crowd. This is unbelievable. I love the microphone, by the way. I'm very, very happy. I said to Mike, it was nice that you picked me first. It probably was a professional courtesy. And he said no, he thought that I was charging the Barker family by the hour, so he'd bring me up here. It's a freebie today. That is a first. So before I make the presentation to Jerry and Stephen Barker, Herb's children and successors at Barker Advertising and Specialty Company, I want to express my deep appreciation for being given the honor of making this presentation. Herb was always like a second father to me. My mother first worked for him in 1962, and yes, I was alive at the time, at Upham's Department Store. For those of you who may remember Upham's, it was located on 44 Colony Street. Over a period of more than 50 years, I got to interact with Herb. I got to watch him, listen to him. I saw a man who was constantly upbeat, a marketing genius, and someone who loved his family and friends completely. My most precious memory of Herb was watching him when he and his lovely wife Gloria were together, which was almost always. Herb loved her so wonderfully. She was the sun around which his life revolved. He would be the first to tell you that he and Gloria were an inseparable team. I'm sure that somewhere, Herb and Gloria are arm in arm as they walk together into Meriden's Hall of Fame. With that, I'd like to make the presentation. Sure. So, Jerry and Stephen, please.
Thank you all for coming today, and thank you to the Meriden Hall of Fame, who had the vision to create this wonderful organization to honor those who have made significant contributions to Meriden. In particular, I would like to thank David Sweedock, who helped shepherd me through this process. And I'd also like to remember Max Moravnik. I remember Max came to me many, many years ago when I was much younger and told me about creating this organization and how excited he was for Louis Kid Kaplan to be one of the first inductees. Thank you, Dennis, for your lovely comments. Mom and Dad had two sons, myself and my brother Stephen. And Stephen is here with his wife Sue, Sue Dunphy, a Meriden family with deep roots in town. And I always said that my parents really had three sons. Dennis, whose father Art passed away very young, had such a close relationship with my folks, and they always did consider him a third son. And thank you so much for being here, Dennis. And also with me is my son, Mom and Dad's grandson, Max Barker, who is representing the third generation of our family business. When Stephen and my grandfather, Julius Barker, emigrated to Meriden in the early 1900s, he found Meriden to be a welcoming city. It wasn't easy for immigrants, and in this case, a Jewish immigrant from the old country, to make a new home. But Meriden did indeed become home, and Julius and Sophia raised 5 boys in their home on Hampshire Road. All 5 boys were hardworking, entrepreneurial, and all very good looking. There was first the supermarket on Colony Street, then the very large supermarket on East Main Street run by Joe and Earl, and then the department store, Barker's Department Store, run by Irving. There was even a Barker's Dry Cleaner run by Art Barker. As the youngest child, Dad sought new paths with Mom Gloria, and after starting a wholesale toy and souvenir business, bought the Upham's Department Store in the early 1960s. The 1965 fire, probably the largest fire in the history of Meriden, was devastating. And as a 9-year-old boy, I remember distinctly the night of the fire. I was sleeping in our house on Brownstone Ridge, and I heard some commotion. At around 3 a.m., I woke up, and I went downstairs, and I saw my dad in a cast, sitting with my mom and with Alan and Shelley Solomon, their attorneys. And I turned, and I said, "What's going on?" And my father looked at me with a smile, and he said, "Everything's fine. Everything's fine." And I realized then, or many years later, how special my mom and dad were, that in the worst moment of their lives, they wanted to present a smiling image. And that's how they treated everybody, with grace, with dignity, and with compassion. As the youngest child, I always felt that my father, our father, Herb Barker, longed for respect and approval from his brothers and his father. It wasn't easy being the youngest, and today this honor, being inducted into the Meriden Hall of Fame, means so much to my family and means so much to my dad and mom. Thank you for inducting Herb Barker into the Meriden Hall of Fame.
All right, and if you could both stick around for just a couple of seconds here. In addition to the plaque, we do have a proclamation on behalf of the mayor's office, and a proclamation on behalf of the legislature, and a proclamation on behalf of Senator Murphy.
I'm just going to read one. This is the only one we're reading, because if not, we'll be here all afternoon. This is a General Assembly official citation introduced by Representative Hilda Santiago, myself, Representative Catherine Abercrombie, and Representative Michael Quinn. Be it hereby known to all that the Connecticut House of Representatives hereby offers its sincerest congratulations to Herbert Barker, Business and Commerce. Being inducted into the 2022 Meriden Hall of Fame Association, Herbert's passion for business never ceased. His many ventures included a wholesale toy company called Superior Gifts, a large department store called Upham's, Barker Specialty Company, and even a fried chicken franchise called Golden Skillet. As an entrepreneur, Herbert was proud to be awarded Boss of the Year by the Greater Hartford Jaycees and to be inducted into the inaugural class of the Connecticut Business Hall of Fame. We thank you for the dedication and achievement and advocacy that is greatly appreciated by businesses in our community and that has led to this well-deserved Hall of Fame designation. Congratulations. The entire membership extends its very best wishes in this memorable occasion and expresses the hope for continued success. Given the 16th day of October, 2022 in the state capitol, Hartford, Connecticut, by Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter, and Secretary of the State, Mark Harkdell. And congratulations on that. And then I also have one from Senator Chris Murphy.
As I understand it, Herb had a falling out with a gentleman in a white suit who may have had a military designation, and the chicken recipe went somewhere else, unfortunately. Our next recipient in the category of community service is Mollie Stickles Katz, and I'll call on Richard Katz for the presentation.
Thank you. First, I'd like to congratulate the families and friends of the other inductees. Now, my favorite subject, my mother. Mollie Stickles Katz came from very humble beginnings. Having lost her father and older brother by the age of 9, she soon became the family's means of support. Throughout high school, Mollie worked at the Lowe's Poli Palace in Waterbury, holding every position in the theater: usherette, chief usherette, cashier, treasurer, bookkeeper, chief of service, assistant manager, and manager. In the 1930s, women in America worked in a man's world. Mollie Stickles Katz was a precedent setter. Her firsts. In 1939, she became the first woman assistant manager in the Lowe's theatrical chain. And in 1941, she was named the first woman manager. She was the first woman in America to win the Quigley Award, the award selected by Motion Picture Herald judges composed of leading figures in the motion picture field in production and exhibition. She was celebrated as a leading showwoman in the entire country. In a male-dominated field, she was rated as immortal in the theater business. The Quigley Award was said to be equivalent to an Oscar. In 1949, she became the first female member of the Meriden Chamber of Commerce. I often wondered why rakes, toasters, vacuum cleaners, and shoes, and other goods were in the lobby of the theater. She was advertising for the downtown merchants. My mother lived and worked in Meriden from 1944 to 1965. While in Meriden, she managed 2 theaters, the Low Poli East Side and the Poli Palace West. They were approximately a half-mile apart, separated by the railroad tracks. Although she won many theatrical business awards, I nominated her for community service, her true love. While in the theater business, she used both movie houses to foster her passion for community, and upon retirement, she was well known as a civic worker. She was a woman with relentless determination and unmatched perseverance, who had a sweet spot in her heart for the unfortunate. In this city, I counted 29 different organizations my mother worked with as a chairperson, co-chairperson, committee member, or advisor. There were probably more. She did everything from taking a group of teens to visit the United Nations building in New York City to raising funds for her beloved March of Dimes. The following are parts from paper articles and letters that were written about her. They give great insight as to the person she was. 1949, entitled Help All Spirits, Sunday Herald. Wonder how many so-called civic-minded folks in Meriden give their time so freely as Mollie Stickles. The attractive theater manager never refuses help to any sort of a program that will benefit something or someone. That someone is never Mollie. She's done more work unnoticed in the Silver City than the average person realizes. Her latest venture is as chairperson of the Ways and Means Committee of the annual Doll Carriage Parade. Wonder what doll she would like to push down Main Street. From my father, Dr. Irving Katz, Morning Record. After I married her, Wayne C. Smith, the publisher of the Record Journal, used to tease me about her. He'd say, "How are you going to manage an ex-manager?" He also told me that my wife was the smartest business person that ever walked into his office. 1965, after her death, Henry Magruder, the chief of police. I shall always remember Mollie Stickles as a happy, friendly person. After she married, she gave much of her time helping the unfortunate. It may have been she who said, "Help the kid around the corner." In 1965, after death, Frank Corcoran, the sports editor of Record Journal, it has been said, if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it. Mollie Stickles Katz was a busy person. Many people asked her to do many things, and she did them. Difficult projects she did immediately. The impossible took her only slightly longer. Her wide span of interests fanned far into the community and touched all creeds. As chairperson of the March of Dimes, she gave so unselfishly of herself, she has been called irreplaceable. She was a leader who led by doing. From my brother David, who could not be here today, on a personal note, this whole experience has allowed my brother and I to learn things about my mother that we never knew. We always knew she was very accomplished, but not to what extent. It's been a real eye-opener. As typical young boys growing up, you know very little about who your parents really are or the many lives they've impacted. They're just mom and dad. It's only as you get older that you start to learn who they were and what they meant to so many people. Our mother gave a lot in a relatively short time, and if she had not been taken so early, we know she would have done many more wonderful things. I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame committee. I'd like to thank all of you for letting me share part of her life with you. Thank you. Now I'd like to call up my better half, Lori, my wife, and I'd like to present the plaque to her. Love you, Lori. Okay. Thank you very much.
And if you'd stick around for just a second, we also have a citation from the mayor's office, a citation from the legislature, and a citation from Senator Murphy's office.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our next recipient in the category of law and government is the late Walter A. Shamock. And I also, everybody in this room knew Walt. And I knew him as a small child on Wall Street when he was our mailman for a number of years. And then later in life, when I became the corporation counsel, it was an honor to serve with him in the city council. So I'd like to call up Wade Pettengill for the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is difficult to articulate just how inspiring someone truly special was through anybody's words but their own. There is no question that I could sit here at length telling of the countless wonderful memories I had with my grandfather, who I always knew as Bebo. But if you never got a chance to meet and talk with him, even for just a second, then there is nothing I can do to recreate the magic of his person. Walter Alexander Shamock, Walt, never failed to look out for his fellow man, neighbors, friends, family, and even the complete stranger alike. He would always stop to help someone out, no matter who they were, and he was always happy to do so. We went on endless adventures together when I was a kid, from going to the beach, a place he truly loved, to the movies, the ice cream shop, igniting fireworks, and anything in between a boy's heart could love. But I would also always remember those times where he would have to go to leave on a meeting. He would tell me, "Oh, Wade, I have to go to a council meeting," relaying such things as, "I don't really want to go, but they're expecting me there," acting like it was certainly a chore. But what I never realized was, until I got older, was just how much time he had dedicated to many engagements. Not only did he serve for over 30 years as longest running minority party councilor in Meriden's history, but also on the Finance Committee with several years as vice chairman of the Parks and Public Works Committee, Pension Board, and Conservation Committee. But what astonishes me more is all the other accomplishments he had, including his lifelong career as a realtor and also as a U.S. postman for many years as well as serving in his country in the U.S. Air Force during the Korean War, being vice president of his high school class of 1947, and his perpetual passion and aptitude for sports. But not only did he strive to make the most of his life, but he did so with constant consideration for his fellow man. He coached many sports teams, something he enjoyed sincerely, and participated in endless acts of community service. Walt was a lifelong Meriden resident who dedicated his life with the utmost enthusiasm to this city. Looking back, I smile. While I'm sure there were many times he truly didn't want to go to a meeting and certainly would have always opted to spend the time with his family if he could, I have come to realize that he really did enjoy going to those meetings, coaching those games, and everything else in between he did in his life. He was the best grandfather I could have ever asked for, was always proud to call Meriden his home, and will always be a Hall of Famer for me. Thank you.
And if Mrs. Shamock could come up to accept.
All I can say is I think Walt would be very happy over this. The only thing he probably would say, "But what took you so long?" Nothing like short and sweet, right?
No, I know he would have gotten a kick out of this. Absolutely.
He's probably laughing right now.
And we also have for you a citation from the mayor's office, one from the legislature, and also Senator Murphy.
I just want to say a couple of words. I was on the city council with Mr. Walt, that's what I called him, and we sat next to each other for 7 years. Yes, he was kind. He was one of my mentors, along with Matt Dominello, because they knew everything. They've been in Meriden for so long, and they were city councilors for so long. And Even though we disagreed on a lot of issues, he was strong with his convictions, and he stood up to what he really believed in. And one thing about Walt, Mr. Walt, was that he brought constituent issues to the table. And he would be, when we were going through the council meeting, he would be making his notes and making sure that he wouldn't forget anything. And he really, really loved Meriden. And that's what was great about Mr. Walt. And he always had the best interest of Meriden in his heart. So he was a great man. So thank you for sharing him with us, and thank you for sharing him with the city of Meriden.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay. Next, in the category of philanthropy, we are honoring the late Lucille Elaine Bilger. And if Caddy Edson could come up for the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased to be here as we recognize and induct past members of our community into Meriden's Hall of Fame. I am honored to present Miss Lucille Elaine Bilger as she is recognized for her philanthropy. Lucille was a lifelong resident of Meriden. She was born in August of 1924 to Emma Brecklin Bilger and George Bilger. She was raised at her family farmstead on 703 Westfield Road. She was the eldest and sole daughter of 3 children, brothers Alan and David. She graduated from Meriden High School in the class of 1943. As she became of age, Lucille helped manage farm accounts and household duties at the family's dairy farm. As well as keeping things in order at the farm, she attended Larson Junior College, today known as Quinnipiac University. While there, she found her place on the dean's list and graduated in June of 1945 with a degree of Associate in Science with Secretarial Science concentration. Lucille then worked as a secretary at the Miller Company and Connecticut Telephone and Electric on Britannia Street, all while maintaining her presence on the farm. She continued on as a bookkeeper for the remainder of her life on the farm until her health started to decline in the early 2000s. Lucille was involved with various women-based organizations over the years. She was also a royal matron of the Amaranth and held office in the Meriden chapter of the Order of the Eastern Star. She was also an active member of the First Congregational Church in Meriden. Lucille came into my life in my teenage years as I entered hers in the late 90s. My love for farming and agriculture brought us together. As our relationship grew, her health declined, and I stepped in to help with the chores that became more difficult for her to perform. Ultimately, I became her caretaker, and as such, spent many hours by her side, learning about her life and growing up in Meriden and on her family's farm. Lucille has touched the lives of so many in her 92 years on this earth. I was only privileged to enjoy about 20 of those years. In those 20 years, I learned so much about her and her selflessness. She was an altruist at heart and put every person's best interest before her own. I will remember the stories she would tell about fostering families through the Great Depression era and sharing the bounties from their farm with those individuals in need and less fortunate. I always knew her to donate to the church regularly as well as various other charities. Prior to her passing in April 2017, Lucille had generously donated roughly 65 acres of the approximate 120-acre farm to the Meriden Land Trust, and the remainder of that acreage is workable farmland gifted to farming neighbors, and the current caretaker of which is Mr. Francis Perzanowski. Present day, her generous monetary gifts are received primarily with the children of our future in mind, via St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Shriners Hospital for Children, the Bilger Boys and Girls Club Fund, the Bilger's YMCA Fund via the Meriden Wallingford Foundation, Incorporated, and various other charitable entities. In closing, I will never be able to, and will always fall short, in giving Lucille the praise she deserves. I can only recall the stories I was told and everything that I witnessed by her side. Prior to our time together, I'm sure her caring and gentle soul was felt by many. I was blessed to have Lucille as part of my life and family. Lucille's gifts have touched my heart as well as the lives of many in years to come. Thank you for your time. I'd like to welcome Warren Herzig as the acceptor.
Present this to you on behalf of the Meriden Hall of Fame, and congratulations.
I was asked by Guy Francis to make a short presentation, and probably some of this will be a repeat of what Katie has said. But it is an honor for me to be here this afternoon on behalf of Lucille. What I'd like to do is discuss a brief history of the farm, Lucille's wishes, and how we got here. The Bilger farm was previously owned by Lucille's grandparents, William and Emily Brecklin. Here they raised 9 children. Their youngest daughter was Emma, Lucille's mother, and one of their sons was Reinhard, my grandfather. So Lucille and my mother Lois were first cousins. As I was growing up, my grandfather would tell me stories of him growing up on the farm. As Emma's parents grew older, someone had to take over the farm, so George and Emma Bilger assumed that responsibility. Here, Emma and George raised their 3 children, Lucille, Alan, and David. Over the years, our family saw one another occasionally, but farming takes up quite a bit of time. As an aside, my family has a farm in Durham, which I am proud to say is still operating. So we're all quite aware of the responsibilities and time it takes to keep everything going on a farm. Over the years, Lucille lost her family members, and in 2010, she lost her remaining brother, David, to a tragic farm accident. At that time, she was left with the decision as what would become of the farm. After David's death, I met with Lucille and her attorney, Guy DeFrancis. And some of the questions that came up at that time was, came up were her care, maintaining the farm, and what the future of the farm would be. If you didn't know Lucille, she was rather shy, in my opinion, and was somewhat hesitant in making decisions. But regarding the farm and its future, she knew that she wanted to keep the farm as a farm forever. And I would like to quote some of Lucille's statements regarding the farm. My family has operated and loved our farm for a number of generations, and have always wished to have it be preserved as a farm for all future generations to come. She also went on to say that over the years, her brother and her turned down many offers from developers, hoping that ultimately they could preserve the farm. It was fortunate that Lucille had good people in her life, including Katie, Frank and Joe Perzanowski, John Cousineau, Billy Bilger, to name a few, and I apologize for people that I have left out. Knowing that Lucille's desire was to keep the farm as a farm for generations to come, we all had a direction. Because my grandfather grew up on this farm, I felt an obligation to help Lucille fulfill her wishes. After many meetings with local, state, federal agencies, and countless hours, it was determined that the development rights on 75 acres of the farm would be purchased by the Department of Agriculture. It would remain in private ownership, and the state would have certain requirements in keeping that farm. The remaining portion, some 50 to 60 acres, would be donated to the Meriden Land Trust, and its use would be controlled by the policies of Land Trust. Fortunately, Lucille was able to see this come to fruition before her passing. It was a privilege for me to work with many hardworking, dedicated folks to see this happen. Lucille was generous and wanted to do good for her community, and she did. Lucille, God bless you for your kindness and your generosity. I hope we all can make you proud. And to the Meriden Hall of Fame Association, on behalf of Lucille, I thank you for bestowing this honor upon her. Thank you.
And also on behalf of the mayor's office, a citation and a citation from the legislature and a citation from Senator Murphy. Our next inductee in the category of sports is the late Robert J. Szymaszek Jr., and I call up Brian Carpenter for the presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Hall of Fame Board of Directors, friends and family of inductees. Mr. Katz, now I know where you get it from. It's an honor to be presenting my friend Rob Szymaszek upon his induction into the Meriden Hall of Fame. The last time we were gathered here in the Augusta Curtis Cultural Center to honor Rob was on another Sunday, very much like this one, 15 years ago, September 23rd, 2007, Robbie's wake. And the line stretched out those doors, and down those steps, down East Main, and up Pleasant Street. So whatever words I offer here are just mumbles alongside that tribute. Words in general fail to fully capture Rob. You read his resume, his accolades, his plaque, his record, but the words are too quiet. They just lay too still. They don't reflect Rob's spirit, and Rob was all about spirit. He was a force of light and life, a pulse of positivity, a guiding star to whom people gravitated for joy and inspiration. He was a master motivator, and he shared his gifts in this city in which he was bred. He was the son of Millie and Bob, brother of Sharon and Jan, husband to Diane, father to Jennifer. But writ large, Rob Szymaszek was a son of Meriden, a brother to fellow coaches and educators, husband of Maloney football, and father figure to 26 seasons of Spartans. He gave this city his best in youth and in maturity, in health and in sickness. For 6 years, Rob battled brain cancer, taking it on just as he coached, fighting and fearless and believing no matter how steep the odds. Rob believed. How else could you pull off the upset if you could not conceive of pulling it off? Rob believed just as he always got his players to believe. Believe and keep fighting, even after the cause was lost. Rob played to win, and he had his wins, 160 according to the book. He never played to lose, but he had his losses. And September 20th, 2007 was his last one. And yet 3 days later, there was that line extending out this door and down those steps and down East Main Street and down around the corner and up Pleasant Street. And it's still pleasant to think of all those lives Rob touched and influenced, all those lives still carrying on the spirit of Rob. It is fitting with today's inductions that you enshrine that spirit in this very place. Thank you. And I'd like to call up Diane Szymaszek to receive the reward.
The only thing I want to say is I think out of all of Rob's awards, and he did win many, he would probably be most proud of this one. Having his plaque on the Meriden in down City Hall forever. He's part of history, and he won't be forgotten. So thank you.
And our final inductee in the historic category is the late Christopher W. Wilson, and I would call on Donald S. Wilson, Jr. for the presentation.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, all. I'm here today as Christopher's great-grandchild. My sister Melinda is with us as well, and great, and my wife is here, Barbara. I have another sister out in Colorado who couldn't make it, but we shall be glad to hear about what's happened here today. So first, I'd like to say thanks to the Meriden Hall of Fame for choosing to recognize those from our past who have shaped our lives. In the case of Christopher Wilson, one who helped maintain the United States of America as we know it. This is something we should all be grateful for. My travels around the world to places such as the Philippines, Thailand, Pakistan have made quite clear to me how lucky we are to be Americans. To Brian Confonseco for reaching out to me. It's quite by chance that he actually got through to me. I happened to be at home when the phone rang. It's the landline, which I really don't know why we have anymore. And I rarely answer because usually it's something spam or junk mail. At any rate, I did hear Brian start to leave a message and picked up, and we had a very pleasant conversation, and come to find out he had some information about a relative that I've known nothing of. So that's why we're here today. So Christopher W. Wilson, who's being honored today, as I said, was my great-grandfather. I did not know him, as he died long before I was born, as did his son, Christopher W. Wilson, my grandfather, who married Marion Smith, both of who passed before my time. So although we've come to know a great deal about the Smith side of the family, we know little about the Wilson heritage. So it's with great pleasure I and Melinda joined you today as you recognize our great-grandfather, Christopher W. Wilson. So I'm going to read the bio that was put together by the folks here at the Hall of Fame, and Brian, I think, had a hand in that as well. So Christopher W. Wilson was born in 1846 in Dublin, Ireland. His family immigrated to Meriden and was living in today's downtown at the start of the Civil War in 1861. Only 15 years old, Wilson enlisted in the Union Army Infantry at Camp Scott in Staten Island as a private in Company F, 4th Regiment Excelsior Brigade. He was described as being 5'10", with brown eyes, dark hair, and a dark complexion. In 1862, Wilson's left arm and right foot were severely wounded at the Battle of Williamsburg. But after a few months in the New York City Harbor City Hospital, he returned to active duty. Wilson is known for his valor and bravery in the Battle of Spotsylvania on May 12, 1864, where he took the flag from the wounded color barrier and carried it in the charge over the Confederate works, in which charge he also captured the colors of the 58th Virginia Infantry, CSA, bringing off both flags in safety. In November of 1864, Wilson was commissioned as a second lieutenant in his regiment and was promoted to first lieutenant and company commander in March of 1865. He was discharged from the Army on June 29, 1865, following the end of the Civil War. And on December 6 of 1898, at the age of 52, Wilson was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for most distinguished gallantry in action at Spotsylvania, Virginia, May 12, 1864. He remains Meriden's only Medal of Honor recipient with the passing of his With the passing of his mother in 1863 and father in 1865, Wilson never returned to Meriden. He married Henrietta Pettender in 1867 in Brooklyn, New York, had 3 sons and 1 daughter, and started the lumber company, C.W. Wilson and Company. He died in 1916 and is buried in Evergreen Cemetery in Brooklyn. So that makes a connection to our father, who grew up in Brooklyn. And as I said, we knew much about his mom's side, but not too much about his dad. So this is much appreciated. Thank you.
And on behalf of the Meriden Hall of Fame Association, we're going to present you with this plaque, which is a replica of what is hanging in City Hall.
Thank you.
And also a citation from the mayor's office and the legislature and Senator Murphy. And that brings us towards the end of our ceremony this afternoon. But before we go, I am required to do a couple of sales pitches. You're all sitting there wondering, well, how can I vote for someone to be in the Hall of Fame? Well, it's quite simple, actually. You just have to join the Hall of Fame. We offer yearly memberships and an annual membership. If you think you're going to live more than 4 or 5 years, get the lifetime membership. You'll save yourself a lot of money in the long run. We certainly are always looking for new members in our ranks. Also available today are nomination forms. You don't have to be a member to nominate someone for the Hall of Fame. You just have to be a member in order to vote for that person. And one thing that I was remiss at last year's ceremony that Joe Zajac has reminded me of pretty much every day since is to thank, as always, Inner Groove for providing the musical entertainment at our ceremonies. They've been doing this for probably the last 10 years or so, and they are greatly appreciated. And thank you, as always, for being here. And now I'd like to call on my fellow board member, Chad Cardillo, for another sales pitch.
Thanks, Mike. I'm not sure this is exactly a sales pitch, but I just wanted to take this time. I'm a social studies teacher over at Maloney High School, and just let everybody know there was a little snippet in the letter that came out this year, but the coordination that occurs between the Meriden Hall of Fame board and one of our classes, a historical Meriden class that we have at Maloney High School. And in the past 3 or 4 years, I believe, that we've been collaborating with the Meriden Hall of Fame, we've had multiple people that the students have researched, and the students have sent their application in to the Meriden Hall of Fame, and a couple of them have been inducted from research that the students have done. I know Rob was a perennial favorite to be brought up, and we're very thankful that he was inducted this year. And I just wanted to let everybody know, the collaboration that goes on is a really great way of allowing Meriden students, Maloney students, to learn more about, the people in the past in Meriden and the present in Meriden that are doing, so much work for the city. And also, thank you, Mr. Rob Kaczynski and the Board of Ed for allowing us to have this class as well. It's been really enlightening for a lot of students. And that's my pitch.
Thank you, Chad. And I would be further remiss, and then I'd hear about it for another year, if I didn't recognize Rob Kaczynski, the president of our local Board of Education. And finally, just a round of applause to the members of the Board of Directors of the Meriden Hall of Fame Association. Without their hard work, this ceremony wouldn't happen every year. So thank you all for everything that you do for our organization and for honoring the history of Meriden. And finally, I'll call on Deacon George Frederick for the benediction.
As we conclude this Hall of Fame ceremony, may we leave here with an ever-greater determination to be inspired by the lives and works of those we honored here today, that we may become an inspiration to others. May we leave here with the will and the courage to move beyond ourselves and leave our mark on our beloved city of Meriden for future generations, understanding that what we do for others will be done unto us. And we bow our heads and pray for God's blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he look upon you kindly and give you his peace. Amen.
Thank you, Deacon. And again, thank you to all of you for being here today. This is very special for all of the families to have such a great turnout from our community to honor their loved ones. And I thank you all for coming. and offer you refreshments. You must eat and drink because we don't take anything home. So I think it works out to about 5 or 6 munchkins a person. So just do the best you can. But again, thank you very much, and we will see you next year.